After a long wait of almost 8 months, my latest article has finally been published. An article whose scope reaches all of historic academia due to it exposing some often used faulty methodology. This study is one that I probably would not have written if not for making a video on this channel back in April, the one I have playing in the background. It took me over 2 months to research, voice, and edit this video, and hopefully the published article displays the level of research I put into each and every one of my uploads. The subject of this paper is not only the alleged doping and drug use by ancient Greek athletes. After a few revisions, I was also able to add some refutations of Pankration misconceptions, so it will still have relevance for my main subject of interest. Now, I mentioned that the scope of this article goes beyond ancient Greek doping or even Pankration. That is because it deals with faulty methodological practices that are often overlooked in many publications found in history and other fields of research. I speak of the over-reliance on the authority of previous published authors. A bit of backstory. When making the Olympian nutrition video, I had a small segment in which I mentioned doping. But during the research for that video, I couldn't find evidence of what modern scholars were claiming about the subject, namely that they unanimously agreed that doping existed in ancient Greece, and these substances ranged from psychedelics to analgesics and even HGH. This seemed far-fetched to me, but I didn't have time to do a deep dive for what was supposed to be just a side note on the main topic of the video. Later, I figured that I would make a new one dedicated to the subject, but when researching, I probably opened a good 5 or 6 articles and books and could not find a single primary source. That's when I figured I'd start organizing each reference and keep a record of its citations, so I could later analyze the network of sources reporting on the alleged drug use. In other words, I organized and drew a graph displaying how the citations relate to each other and where they end. While doing this, I was certain that somehow all these authors were getting their information from somewhere that I just couldn't find, because of how widespread the phenomena was and how confidently they stated their claims as facts. Surprisingly, after researching every article and book I could find on the topic, and going through all of their citations, I realized that none of them had a single primary source. They all referred to one another, with the final citation being a study with either no references or one that does not mention what they claimed. Of course, I also found a plethora of outright fabrications, errors in chronology, sourcing, quoting, and more. I go over this in the video as well. I was somewhat afraid that this article would not be well received by the journal because here's some random dude without a degree in the field writing an article disputing 50 well-established academic authors. But this hesitation was unwarranted because it was well received from the start. I was only told that the refutations alone were not enough to constitute a publication and that I needed to add a segment so that it would have a wider approach on a particular subject. Hence, I added one for cheating in general in the ancient Greek Olympics. I also could have written on what foods the athletes did eat at the time, but chose not to. Although I have done a lot of research on what they may have consumed, these are literary sources. To do a full segment, there would need to be, at least in my opinion, more archaeological evidence from chemical analyses or the study of human skeletal remains. That would help confirm whether or not these athletes did consume what was suggested by doctors of the time, such as Hippocrates or Herodotus. Modern authors write about rampant chronic cheating in the ancient Greek Olympics, but what is confirmable is only 2 instances of cheating throughout over half a millennium of competition, including, of course, multiple events. There was even no indirect evidence of cheating, like for example praying to the gods to curse their competitors using katavismi, which are curse tablets. Curse tablets existed in ancient Greece, but none of them pertained to athletic competition. Only during the Roman era do we see the creation of curse tablets specifically meant to curse athletes for an advantage in the games. And when it comes to vase depictions, guess which is the only sport in which scholars claim cheating is displayed? Yep, Pankration. That's how they can justify their conclusions about this brutal sport of fight-to-the-death bouts that are completely unsubstantiated. Well, to no surprise, these allegations of depicted cheating are false, based solely on speculative interpretations, even written on the official website of the British Museum. The Olympics held a sacred and religious significance for the ancient Hellenists, and claiming they cheated and took harmful substances to gain even a slight advantage is a projection of modern biases to a culture that held their sport to a different standard. imposing our own societal norms and desires to those that did not seek solely to gain wealth for their effort and competitive spirit. Money and the demand of athletes to not just be great at their sport, but also unnaturally entertaining and flagrantly over the top so as to not risk their livelihood, has corrupted the essence of today's athletic competitions, which is exactly what the ancient Greeks tried to prevent, to protect the sanctity of their sports in the ancient Olympics and Pan-Hellenics. Ultimately, this article would have helped immensely in the writing of my book, because I could reference it in a subchapter without having to waste words going through the tedious methodology required to prove my point. But due to the academic financial system, I could not obtain the funding necessary for the authorship process to advance. Any help on Patreon or purchases on Ko-Fi are the only way I can complete this work. For anyone who has supported the channel over the years, I really appreciate it, and will remain active on both Patreon and Ko-Fi. Cheers everyone.